The wind howled through the desolate streets of Eldridge as the last light of New Year's Eve flickered away. The small town nestled between dense forests and forgotten fields seemed to hold its breath as the clock struck midnight. An unsettling silence fell upon the town, broken only by the distant echoes of distant revelry. In a modest two-story house at the edge of town, Sarah, a young woman with a troubled past, prepared to spend the night alone. She had recently moved to Eldridge, seeking solace, but the town's ominous reputation persisted. Eldridge was rumored to be a place where the veil between the living and the dead was thin, especially on New Year's Eve. As Sarah settled into her solitude, the ancient grandfather clock in the corner began to chime, marking the arrival of the new year. The air in the room grew thick, and shadows danced on the walls as if they had a life of their own. Unnerved, Sarah dismissed her unease as mere imagination, determined to enjoy a quiet night. The clock struck 1, and a strange chill crept through the room. Sarah shivered, feeling a spectral presence lingering in the air. She turned away from the clock only to be met by the sight of a flickering candle on the table. Its flame danced erratically, casting eerie shadows that seemed to contort into grotesque shapes. A sudden gust of wind blew through the half-open window, extinguishing the candle. The room plunged into darkness and Sarah's heart raced. As she fumbled for a match, a whisper echoed through the room, chilling her to the bone. "Remember, Sarah, the past cannot be outrun." Startled, Sarah looked around, her eyes straining in the dark. The voice seemed to resonate from the walls themselves, a ghostly reminder of the secrets she had left behind. Desperate to dispel the rising fear, she relit the candle and tried to dismiss the haunting words as a figment of her imagination. But the unsettling presence persisted. As the clock continued its relentless march, each hour brought with it an escalating sense of dread. Shadows twisted and writhed in the corners of the room, and the air became charged with an otherworldly energy. Sarah began to hear faint whispers, unintelligible but laced with a malevolent urgency. Determined to confront her fears, Sarah ventured into the old attic where dusty relics of Eldridge's past were stored. The air was thick with the musty scent of forgotten memories. Among the cobweb-covered boxes, she discovered an ancient journal belonging to a woman named Eliza, who had lived in the same house centuries ago. Eliza's entries spoke of a dark ritual performed in Eldridge on New Year's Eve, a ritual to appease an ancient force that demanded a reckoning with the town's tormented souls. The more Sarah read, the more she realized that the whispers and shadows were manifestations of the town's troubled history, seeking resolution. Determined to unravel the mystery, Sarah delved deeper into Eliza's journal. The entries detailed a series of events that culminated in a tragedy, leaving the town cursed. The ancient force demanded a sacrifice each New Year's Eve, and those who failed to comply faced an eternity of torment. As Sarah reached the final pages, she discovered that Eliza had sought to break the curse but had vanished mysteriously, leaving the task incomplete. It became clear that Sarah was now entwined in the same fate, and the reckoning was at hand. The clock struck 11, and Sarah, armed with newfound knowledge, ventured into the heart of Eldridge. The town square was bathed in an otherworldly glow, and the air resonated with anguished whispers. She could feel the weight of centuries of sorrow pressing down on her as she approached the decaying remnants of an ancient oak tree. As the clock in the town square struck 12, the spectral figures of Eldridge's tormented souls materialized around Sarah. Their eyes held a haunting mix of desperation and accusation. The ancient force had demanded its due, and the town's past sins manifested in a nightmarish tableau. Summoning her courage, Sarah spoke aloud the words Eliza had written centuries ago, attempting to complete the ritual and break the curse. The air crackled with an unseen energy, and the spectral figures recoiled. For a moment, the town seemed to hold its breath, but then an unearthly wail pierced the air as the ancient force resisted its release. Shadows swirled around Sarah, threatening to consume her. The tormented souls of Eldridge intensified their cries, torn between liberation and the chains of the curse. In a final act of defiance, Sarah channeled all her strength, pleading for forgiveness and redemption. The clock struck 1, and the town's oppressive atmosphere shattered. The spectral figures dissipated and the shadows retreated, leaving Eldridge bathed in the soft light of a new dawn. As the first rays of sunlight broke through the horizon, Sarah stood alone in the town square, catching her breath. The weight that had burdened Eldridge for centuries lifted, and the air felt lighter. The once dreaded town now stood silent, its troubled past laid to rest. With a weary smile, Sarah realized that the reckoning was complete. The ancient force had been appeased, and Eldridge could finally find peace. As she walked away from the town square, the echoes of the past faded into the distance, leaving only the promise of a new beginning. Little did she know that the town's history, though scarred, would forever be etched in the fabric of its existence. A cautionary tale whispered through the ages. The village of Wintertide lay nestled in the embrace of snow-covered hills, its quaint cottages adorned with twinkling lights and festive decorations. Christmas Eve had arrived, and the air was filled with the joyful laughter of families gathered around crackling hearths. However, on the outskirts of the village there stood a dilapidated mansion, its windows boarded up and its grandeur lost to time. Legend spoke of the mansion as the home of the forsaken composer, a mysterious figure who had once graced Wintertide with enchanting melodies. Whispers in the village told of a haunting carol composed by the maestro that, when played, would bring terror and despair. The carol had been banished from the town's celebrations, and the mansion left to crumble into obscurity. As night fell over Wintertide, a young woman named Emily, drawn by a strange curiosity, decided to explore the abandoned mansion. Ignoring the warnings of the villagers, she ventured into the snow-covered garden, where the mansion loomed like a specter against the moonlit sky. The creaking gates swung open with an otherworldly groan, and Emily stepped into the foyer of the forsaken mansion. The air inside was thick with the weight of forgotten memories, and the once grand chandeliers now hung as skeletal remnants of a bygone era. The mansion seemed frozen in time, untouched by the warmth of festive cheer that enveloped the rest of the village. Emily's breath misted in the chilly air as she ascended the grand staircase, guided by an eerie compulsion that drew her toward the derelict ballroom. Pushing open the heavy double doors, Emily found herself in a vast room, its walls adorned with faded portraits of the forsaken composer. A grand piano sat in the center, covered in a layer of dust that hinted at years of neglect. The air seemed charged with an unseen energy, and the atmosphere weighed on Emily's shoulders like a tangible force. Against her better judgment, Emily brushed off the dust from the piano and hesitantly pressed a key. A haunting melody echoed through the desolate ballroom, its melancholic notes carrying a sense of longing and sorrow. The mansion itself seemed to come alive with the music, as if the very walls whispered forgotten tales. As Emily played, a shadowy figure emerged from the darkness. A phantom in tattered clothes, its face obscured by the dim light. The forsaken composer, thought to be a mere legend, stood before her. His eyes, pools of darkness, bore into Emily's soul, and a hushed silence fell upon the room. With a voice that seemed to echo from the depths of the abyss, the composer spoke. "You have awakened the melody that was meant to remain silent, child. The forgotten carol seeks release." Emily, paralyzed by a strange mix of fear and fascination, asked, "Why was it banished, and why does it bring terror?" The composer's spectral form moved closer, revealing a sorrowful expression. "The carol was my plea for salvation, a reflection of the pain that consumed my heart. But the villagers, blinded by fear, cast me and my creation aside. The forgotten carol holds the echoes of my torment, a curse that I unwittingly unleashed upon this forsaken mansion." A sudden realization gripped Emily. The village had abandoned the composer, leaving him to suffer alone. With a newfound empathy, she pledged to help him find peace. The composer's eyes flickered with a glimmer of hope as he guided Emily to the grand piano. "Play the final verse of the forgotten carol," he implored. "Only then can the curse be lifted, and my soul released from this eternal night." Emily, despite the unease that permeated the air, began to play the final verses of the haunting carol. The mansion trembled with each note, and the portraits on the walls seemed to weep. As the last chord reverberated through the ballroom, a profound stillness settled over the mansion. But the silence was shattered by a guttural growl emanating from the shadows. the ghostly figures of the villagers, twisted by the malevolent force of the forgotten carol, materialized around Emily. Their eyes glowed with an otherworldly malice as they advanced, driven by the curse that had bound them to the forsaken mansion. The composer's visage contorted with anguish as he realized the unintended consequences of breaking the silence that had enveloped the mansion for so long. The spirits of the villagers, trapped in a state of perpetual torment, sought revenge on the living. With the mansion descending into chaos, Emily raced against time to find a solution. Desperation fueled her determination as she rifled through forgotten manuscripts in search of an answer. In a dusty corner, she discovered a tattered journal that chronicled the events leading to the banishment of the forgotten carol. The journal revealed that the villagers had misunderstood the composer's plea for redemption, and in their fear they had unwittingly bound their own souls to the cursed melody. The only way to break the curse was to confront the spirits and offer them forgiveness. Armed with this newfound knowledge, Emily ventured into the heart of the spectral chaos. The tormented villagers, their faces contorted by anguish, surrounded her with accusing eyes. Emily, with a trembling voice, spoke of understanding and forgiveness, urging the spirits to release their anger and find solace. As she pleaded, the air seemed to shift and the spirits wavered between rage and sorrow. The composer, watching from the shadows, whispered words of remorse and repentance, acknowledging the unintended consequences of his creation. Slowly, the spectral figures began to fade, their ethereal forms dissipating like morning mist. The air lightened, and a serene calm settled over the mansion. The villagers' souls found release, and the mansion's once foreboding atmosphere transformed into an eerie tranquility. The composer, his spirit now at peace, approached Emily. "You have granted me redemption, young one. The forgotten carol is silenced, and the curse lifted. My eternal night has come to an end." As he spoke, the mansion itself seemed to crumble away, revealing a picturesque landscape bathed in the soft glow of dawn. Wintertide, now free from the shackles of the haunting melody, lay before them in all its festive splendor. The villagers, unaware of the supernatural events that had transpired, resumed their Christmas celebrations. Emily, though forever changed by the encounter, found solace in the knowledge that she had brought peace to the forsaken mansion and its tormented souls. As she walked back into the heart of wintertide, the snow-covered hills whispered tales of forgiveness and redemption, ensuring that the legend of the forgotten carol would be remembered not as a curse but as a reminder that even in the darkest of melodies, there lies the potential for a harmonious resolution.